New school versus old school. It's time we got in the current century, clutch closers. There's a couple of things we got to work on, clutch closers. One, we got to work on our approach. You think about the old way we did business, right? The old school way. The old school way, the customer came to us. You probably had an office that you sat in and you sat behind a desk. There was no computer on it. It was you and a phone, and you waited for the customer to come to you. Or maybe you were old school in the car business and you stood out front and you waited on an up to pull up on the lot. And you waited around with a bunch of other salespeople and you stood out there and you BS'd about the weather, about sports, about football, about baseball, and your only goal was to out-hustle the guy beside you. And if you could get in front of that salesperson and catch the next up that walked on the lot, you were probably okay and you could probably sell a car that day. But today's world, in the new school way, I'm going to put this down here where you can remember it, G2C. You have to go to the customer. And what does that mean to go to the customer, right? You've got to go to where they're at. They are wanting to do business on their phone, they're on the internet, they are doing the shopping. The old school way, a customer visited 7, 8, 9 dealerships before you ever shook their hand. If you closed them that day, odds are they'd went to 7, 8, 9 stores. Now, they go to 1.2 because they're doing all that shopping online. We had one means of communication back then, and it was probably this. This is all we had, right? We had our mouth, and it was face-to-face. It was a verbal communication, face-to-face, and that's how 90% of it was done. And that brings up number 2. We got to work on how we communicate with the customer. Not only do we got to approach them completely differently, because we're approaching them by phone, we're approaching them by text messages. That's a form of approach that weaves into the form of this communication, because today, everything's mobile. Right? Everything's mobile, and it's a mobile microwave world. Your customer wants things instantly, and they want it now. And you may sit there and they send you an email, and you reply to it, or you call them, and you just feel like you're getting completely and totally ignored. And you very well may be, because in this microwave world, customers and the information that they have is instant. And we have to learn to communicate with our customers the way they want to be communicated with. And if you only have one way to communicate, old school, you're probably fine. It was going to be mouth. It's going to be this. This is it. This is the only way you communicated, right? Face to face, on the phone. And a lot of you didn't even use the phone back then. It was pretty much face to face, if you want to be honest. Old school way was right here, and it was nothing else. If you only have one way to communicate with your customer, you have one phone number. Odds are you're going to be just getting hammered with voicemail. You want to know how to avoid getting voicemail? Look at the link down below, and it says how not to get voicemail. If you only have one phone number, that's what you're getting. You've got to find the way your customer wants to communicate with you. They're communicating with Facebook Messenger. They're communicating with WhatsApp. They're communicating with Snapchat. They're communicating by phone. They're communicating by email. They're communicating by text message. And odds are your customer has one preferred method that they communicate with above and beyond all else. And if you don't have that, then you're not going to get in touch with them. And if you don't figure it out, if you don't figure out how to communicate with your customers, if you don't figure this piece out right here, you become a dinosaur. What happens to dinosaurs? Look around. You see any dinosaurs around you anymore? Dinosaurs die off. You have to figure this out or you die. And while you're figuring out how to communicate with your customer, oftentimes you're trying to figure out how to deliver information. And the way we deliver information to our customers has completely and totally changed. The way they get information now. Think about this. Before they contact you, we go back into that old deal, they're going to go to 1.2 dealerships. Old school way, 7, 8, 9 dealerships they visited before they came here. Why did they visit so many dealerships? Because we were the source of information for them. They came to us from information, and they got what they needed from this person. They moved to the next dealership. They got a little bit more of what they needed from this person, a little bit more of what they needed from this person, and before long they were ready to make an informed decision. Now they get all their information from YouTube, Google, Edmunds, KBB. There's all these sources of information. And you know what? You need to understand that you're not Google. You're not YouTube. You're not Kelley Blue Book. You're not Edmunds. They can get the appraisal for their car online. They can go to bankrate.com and figure out what their payments are going to be. All this information is available to them online if they want it and need it. They seek out, they get that information, and then they come to you. So while we figure how we change information delivery, your customer already has this. Your job has changed dramatically from the old school way to the new school way. Information is still important, but now your job is to figure out how to make the customer feel good about the decision that they're making. That's what they need you for. That's how you have remained relevant, and that's how you're not becoming a dinosaur. Because if all your customer needed was information to help them make a decision, then Amazon would be selling cars every day online. But they can't sell cars online because they need you to get them to feel better about why and what they are purchasing. If you can't figure out that your customer already has all the information and that your job right now is to make them feel good about the purchase they are about to make, if you can't figure that out, you die. Number 4, transactions. How is your customer wanting to transact with you? How do they want to do business? The old school way, the old dinosaur way is they came to us, they did business our way, it was our way or the highway, and we were very arrogant about that. And the new school way is we do business the way the customer wants to do business. We transact business with them the way they want it to happen, not our way. Their way's the most important. And if we're talking about old school, you know, AC/DC's one of the greatest rock bands of all time, decided long ago that they weren't getting into the new school way. If you were a fan of AC/DC and you wanted to listen to their music, that wasn't enough for them. When it came time to part with your cash, they wanted you to do it their way. They fought the digital revolution forever. They weren't on iTunes. They weren't on streaming services. They signed exclusive deals with Walmart where you had to physically go to Walmart and buy the old school. And it's funny now to think CDs are old school, but to buy old school CDs and you had to have that physical piece of media in your hand. So it wasn't enough to be a fan. It wasn't enough to spend your money with them. They were going to tell you how to do it. And eventually AC/DC started to die off and they realized that they were missing out and that they were going to have to grow. They eventually put all their albums online. They bought into the digital experience and their fan base exploded. When Apple Pay first launched, there was this big line drawn in the sand that certain places said, we're not going to accept Apple Pay. CVS was my pharmacy back then. CVS had said that. If you want to come in, you can't pay with Apple Pay. So it wasn't enough that I decided to grace CVS's doors, that I decided to walk in and do business with them and spend my money with them. That wasn't good enough for them. They wanted to tell me how I was going to spend that money to them. And if you want to pay that way, we're not accepting it. So I changed pharmacies. And if you are going to tell your customer how to do business with you, how they're going to part with their cash with you, if you're going to continue to tell your customer that, if you're going to continue to dictate that to your customer, you die. And if somehow you're not dead yet, if you don't figure out how to manage your funnel, I guarantee you you're going to die. The old school way was all you had to do was out-hustle the person standing beside you. Remember we talked about that earlier in our approach and how that looked like when we approached our customers? All we had to do was out-hustle the person next to us and we could survive, we could win, we could eat that day. But today it's just not that easy. You have to think backwards, not just forwards, but you have to take Darwin's lesson. Remember I talked about that in How to Read? I'll put a link to that down below too. How to Read, we talked a little bit about Darwin in there. But you have to think backwards. If I want to sell a car today, what do I need to do that? I'm probably not going to be able to stand out, anymore. It used to be a lot like fishing. You just stood out there and casted your line and you sat back and you waited for a nibble. But nowadays, when those fish are coming up, when your customers are coming up, they've already got a hook, right? Somebody else has already talked to them. They've already set an appointment. They're there to see Jimmy. They've already talked to Joe. Susie's already got a deal working on them. And if you're just waiting for that fresh up to pull up, you're going to die. So if I want to sell 1 car today, odds are I need 2 appointments for that to happen. So when you showed up today, when you showed up to do business, how many appointments do you have? That's what you need to concentrate on. Not how many cars you want to sell or you think you're going to sell. How many appointments do you have? Holy cow, I've got 0? Now, what do you need to do to get those appointments? Well, you've got to have qualified conversations with people who don't work there, who aren't hanging around, waiting for the next up to come up and drive up on the lot. They're waiting for the up bus. You can't have conversations with those. You have to have qualified conversations with people who are in the market to buy. And how many qualified conversations does it take to set an appointment? Somewhere between 20 and 40. So if you're managing and setting your funnel, that means you're making phone calls somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 100 phone calls today. I would gather that most people, those below average people out there, the ones who aren't clutch in the close, they're making probably less than 5 phone calls a day. And we need to be making 50 to 100 phone calls today so you can set your 2 appointments, so you can manage this funnel. And while we're managing our funnel, you know, your funnel just kind of covers up your whole page, your whole book of business that you have, and all your leads go into the funnel. Everything gets put in, all your phone calls, your emails, your text messages, all your lead sources, your B-backs, the service customers, the people in equity. Everything is funneling through, coming down your funnel, and at the very end, a deal pops out at the bottom. But you have to be managing this funnel. If all you're concentrating in the old school way, all we concentrated on was the close, all we concentrated on was the deal, and we knew how to close and we knew how to overcome objections. I'm going to tell you, I don't care how many objections you know how to overcome. I don't care how good you are in the process, how strong your walk around is, how strong your meet and greet is. None of that matters if you don't have anybody in front of you. If you don't have the appointment, if you don't have the butt in the seat, you die. New school versus old school clutch closers, where are you at? Adjust your approach. Adjust the way you're communicating with your customer, the way you're delivering information to your customer, the way they're receiving that information. We're talking about transactions. Stop telling your customers how to buy from you. Do business the way they want to do business. G2C. Go to your customers. And the most important thing, fill your funnel. Manage your book of business. Create a book of business and manage it. If your idea of managing a funnel is standing around waiting for a turkey to fall out of the sky, I guarantee you you're going to die and you're not going to be clutching the close. So be clutching the close out there, clutch closers. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you can continue to get alerts. Go out there and don't wait for that turkey to fall out of the sky, clutch closers, and don't die.